Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, November 12th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is today. The game against Michigan in just 14 days, 2 weeks till the Michigan game. I can't believe it either. We have spent just about the whole week talking about the offense in one form or another. That can they run the ball? Should they be throwing to Marvin Harrison more? How much did the weather impact their attack last weekend? So today we're going to switch things up. We're just going to talk about the defense. And we're going to do it with defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. He had a lot of interesting things to say this week during his weekly press conference, and I thought you'd enjoy hearing directly from him, so here we go. Let's start with just pressure on the quarterback. How important is it for them to be able to get pressure on the quarterback, and how does Knowles think they're doing in that department so far this year?
I think we've been doing quite well. I mean, last game wasn't a passing game, but season long, I feel like the majority of our pressures have been for man rush, and we're doing a good job disguising coverages, and to me that's what it's all about. I mean, that's when you're really playing well, is when you can get the sacks and the pressures without bringing extra people.
A bunch of the questions the last couple weeks have all been kind of pointed towards that Michigan game we talked about off the top of the show. It is still 2 weeks away, but people are sort of finding ways to say, I know the Indiana game's coming up, and I know you got Maryland before then, but let's talk about Michigan. So let's talk about the importance of continuing to improve to make sure that they're really ready for the Michigan game. How important is that to Jim Knowles?
Everything, and I just keep reiterating it to the team or anyone who wants to listen, everything is about habits, that become a lifestyle. So we want to stop every team on every possession of every game. I do not believe that you can, somehow call it out of existence if you haven't done it over and over again when the time comes. So we don't talk really about so much. I mean, we have to talk about who we're playing in terms of game plan, but the way we play has got to be an everyday, every game thing. Where you expect to stop them, you compete to stop them on that series, because when the time comes that you need it, that's all you'll know.
Last week, one of the things that was probably a little frustrating, they only gave up 7 points to Northwestern, but they had trouble getting off the field on third down a bunch. They allowed 9 third down conversions, 4 of them on quarterback runs. So how would Jim Knowles evaluate their third down defense right now? And was that quarterback run a threat from Northwestern, something that really kind of caught them off guard?
I think our third downs have been good, throughout the year. Not pleased last game. The quarterback run is always a difficult component, in that short yardage life. And, I thought we had been doing well with it, but we didn't have a good game with the quarterback run. And then we did not have a good game on third down with the transition into the downfield passing. I've had some experience with this when I was at Duke with playing option teams. Let's face it, basically that's what last game turned into. It was like option football. So when your DBs spend 80% of the game where you're telling them, don't worry about covering the receiver, get off and have your vision back to what's going inside, because they're not throwing the ball. And then all of a sudden, okay, now this is 3rd and 8. They got to throw the ball, and you need to tighten up that transition. It's a difficult transition, and one that I did not do a good enough job preparing them for. So I think that's the couple that they made on longer yardages, I attribute to that transition, and I got to do a better job of coaching that. Best thing about it is we were 4 for 4 on fourth down, which is like 4 turnovers. And in that kind of game, that's what wins you the game. But we certainly need to do a lot better on third down.
So last weekend, how do you set your cornerback rotation? Because it was not quite what people were probably expecting. Jyaire Brown played more snaps than you probably thought, big snaps towards the end of the game. Jordan Hancock didn't play at all. How does that cornerback rotation get set?
Yeah, the elements, right? I mean, and by the way, Jyaire did a good job, right? He really sat on some routes when they did start throwing the ball at the end and did a really nice job. Knocked one away, I know. Yeah, Jordan, I mean, you got to be careful. I mean, the field's a mess. I mean, this guy's fighting his way and competing his way off of a significant injury. So you don't want to put him in, unless you have to, really put him in that situation where he might re-injure it.
College defenses are kind of complicated, and guys will have different responsibilities in different situations. So how does he get guys to understand that? How does he get them to understand situations by using the play calls that he makes?
Really, you only prepare them through experience, and I mean, it's just a matter of like, I don't know, the sheep recognizing the voice of the shepherd, right? It's like, okay, when I call this certain thing now, I'm asking you to change your mindset. You know what I mean? The call, not calling the same call. I don't believe in that. Oh, I call this call and I call it again, but it's 3rd and 8 here. This time it's 1st and 10 and they're running the ball, but you're using the same call and you're expecting the young man to make the change in his mind. Oh, situation's different. I make different calls. So now I just, it's just experience, just getting to say, okay, I made this call because I really want you to focus on they're going to throw the ball, and for them to be able to click over like that into that based on the call, that's on me. I just got to do a better job of preparing them for that, but we get to learn through experience, which is good.
Earlier this year, before the season started, Jim Knowles said he felt like his defense was ahead of schedule, and I think he probably also said it early in the season as well. Does he still feel like that entering the home stretch of the season?
I mean, I'd still say we're ahead of schedule. I mean, we have not, like I've told you before, we've practiced a lot of things that we haven't used. But it's so hard to say because at the Ohio State, the expectations are so high, right? So, I mean, what really is ahead of schedule? I would say for anywhere else in a first-year defense, you'd say you're way ahead of schedule. For Ohio State, you're just saying, we're doing our job. That's what I would say. Yeah, so we're on schedule because we're doing what we're supposed to do. You can't. This is what we're supposed to do as a defense at Ohio State. So we're on schedule.
Ohio State's defense has definitely improved just about any way you can look at it statistically from last year's defense to this year's. There was one metric that someone cited during the press conference where they had moved up to the number 6 defense in the country after being in the 20s or 30s last year. So how much more work does it take to get from number 6 to number 1 as compared to getting from somewhere in the 30s to number 6?
Same work. I think maybe the average fan doesn't understand, like, oh, okay, did I joke before? Like, okay, let me call that defense that gets a turnover. Okay, what defense was that again that produces a turnover? Or it's really the same work, the same habits. It's kind of boring, but it's like the same habits, the same ideals, the same sayings back and forth between me and the players, and you're just trying to get better every day, and don't talk about how far you've come or how much farther we have to go. None of that. Let's just get better today.
Playing in the Big Ten, you play a bunch of different offenses. Some people are going to try and spread you out and throw. Some people are going to try and just bully ball you and load it up with big bodies and just try and run it right at you. So when you were facing an offense that is going to throw a lot of big bodies at you, how do you determine whether you're going to stay in base or whether you're going to go to a bigger package like they did at times last weekend?
Most of the time you'll go to the bigger packages. You try to mix in staying in the base people because you have more options out of the base, right? So you're trying to figure out, okay, are they really just going to keep doing the same stuff, or do they have something else out of it? So you mix in base every now and then to make them feel like they don't have you lined up, that you might do something different, that they just can't say, oh, okay, they're doing this, we're doing this, they're doing that. So you mix it up.
Last week, Indiana played 3 different quarterbacks in one game. Now, there's the old saying that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks. I can't imagine there's really a saying about three quarterbacks, but if there was, it's probably not a positive one. So does a team playing three quarterbacks in one game, does that present a challenge to how Jim Knowles had to prepare his team this week?
They're pretty similar. And one guy may run around a little bit more, but I think your preparation is the same. Unless there's really a drastic change in what they do from one quarterback to the next, you try to keep it as similar as possible between the two different guys.
Here's one we heard a little bit from Ryan Day about earlier in the week, but it's kind of an interesting question, and Jim Knowles has a little bit of a different perspective on it. So, is Jim Knowles comfortable with the defensive line rotation right now? Because Zach Harrison and JT Tuimoloau are only playing about half of the fourth quarter snaps last week in a somewhat close game. Does he want to see some changes there, or is he okay with that as it played out last week?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with whatever Coach Johnson does, right? I mean, he's a fantastic coach, so I think he manages his players accordingly. But I know sometimes we get caught up in packaging, right? Like I think they had all in the 50s, eventually at the end. But sometimes we get caught up in packaging and different calls that I make that put certain people in the game. Also, it's like it's a 4-quarter thing, yes, but it's also a series-to-series thing. It's also in the middle of series thing, So it's a way that he keeps the guys fresh and moving and all involved. So I don't, it's been successful. So definitely go with how he calls it.
Terron Vincent has been a really nice story for Ohio State this fall. He came to Ohio State as the number 1 defensive tackle in his class back in 2018. Flashed a little bit early and then just got hurt and couldn't stay on the field and just couldn't make a consistent contribution because he just couldn't stay healthy. Well, this year he has stayed healthy and he has really turned into a breakout star for this team. Has that been a surprise for Jim Knowles? What is he seeing from Terron Vincent right now?
He's playing to that level. If that, I didn't even know his level. I mean, that, like that 4-star and 5-star stuff, coming in or looking at it. But he has been absolutely consistent since I've been here. And, we joke all the time, he and I, about the amount of double teams he has to take on. You know what I mean? It's not very sexy, but he does that work. And he's been incredibly consistent with it, and really a bonus, for me to have inside, because then he'll be, he can do that. I don't care who you are; nobody really likes that, but he can do that. But then when we move him, he's athletic enough to make plays. Both, yeah.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I always love hearing from Jim Knowles. He's one of those guys who just. You feel like you learn a lot listening to him talk about football, and just a very smart guy, and has had a pretty positive impact on the Ohio State defense so far this year. We will see if that positive impact continues. Today at noon, as the Buckeyes host Indiana, we will have our usual pregame coverage live from Ohio Stadium on Saturday morning at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And then, of course, all of our full wall-to-wall postgame coverage, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Right as soon as that clock hits 0, the Buckeye Huddle team will be there with some instant analysis, insight, breaking it all down for you, then some interviews with players and coaches, and then Tony Girdham and Kevin Newton and I with the Buckeye Weekly Instant Reaction postgame show. After that, usually 2.5 hours of fun live content, breaking it all down, telling you what we saw, what we heard, what we learned, and what it all means with that Michigan game just 2 weeks away. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you a little later on.